Hello and welcome to another episode of the Student Loan Pointer Podcast. I'm Travis, and I'm excited to dive into a really shocking thought that I had that I thought I would share with you, and that is something called the IDR Recertification Time Bomb. And it's something that I want to make people aware of, and it's something that I want people to be prepared for. And if you listen to this podcast regularly, you will be prepared for it. So you are in the safe category, but there's other people out there that don't listen to this that you could share this information with, and I hope you will. So let me just explain what this idea is. So you know that your recertification date, if you're on an income-driven repayment plan, has been pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, right? Not surprising there, but you know that it's been pushed many, many times. Now, I was thinking about this, and this really reflects the same treatment that the student loan pause got. Student loan pause got extended over and over and over and over and over again, and for a couple reasons. It was politically the easy thing to do, right? It's something that the government did not have to directly pay for due to accounting rules, which frankly drive a lot of the government's behavior in terms of what has a CBO score, what doesn't have a CBO score, what has pay for rules, what doesn't have pay for rules. And it became just a very easy thing to just keep hitting that easy button and extending it, right? And it wasn't until you had a private student loan refinancing company sue to stop it, as well as Republicans demanding that ending the student loan pause be traded for, I think it was raising the debt ceiling or something like that, among other things. So in other words, you had all these groups that were against that action pushed back really hard after it had been extended so many times. It was only then that it ended. Now, the IDR recertification deal being delayed over and over again is really very similar to the student loan pause. It's something that's not as expensive, at least transparently, because nobody can really model in government how much money people would make if people were forced to recertify. And so what happens is you get this uncertain amount of money that the government is saving, and it is something that, since it's not estimated, there seems to be no cost in just continuing to extend that delay as to how long you have until you have to recertify your IDR payment again. And so this is a really big deal. This is a really big deal because of the impact it's going to have on borrowers' wallets. And so, think about right now, as at the time I recorded this, theoretically, everybody's got to start recertifying something in like around the election, but everybody knows that's not going to happen. It's going to get delayed again, probably. And right now, I'm seeing most people have updated NSLDS dates for recertifying their IDR plan, not until like mid-2025. And that's just reflective of them pushing it back and saying anybody that's before, like I think it was October 1, gets pushed out a year. And you know what's going to happen when we hit that date? They'll probably extend it again, right? To maybe January or something like that. And this is because the Biden administration doesn't want anyone to have to pay a more updated IDR number right before an election. In the same way that Trump started the student loan pause and then extended it again right before the election, right? Because they want to win, right? And in this case, obviously, Vice President Harris, part of the Biden administration, they would be of the same view, I think, on this, on the benefits of extending that recertification delay. Now, another argument for it is just how chaotic the student loan system is. If the student loan system is an utter chaos, how do you ask people to recertify their income when they can barely do anything? And that's also a valid point, right? So anyways, you get these recertification delays happen again and again and again and again. And what I'm concerned about is if you look at the math, you look at the calendar, if you look at everything that's happening in the court system, people's payments might, when the recertification delay finally ends, the payments in many cases for people might 10x or 20x what they're paying right now, depending on what happens with courts. And so let me explain what I mean by this. Think about the last time that so first of all, you're either somebody who graduated, after March 13th, 2020, or you're somebody that graduated your program before that date. If you graduated before that date, if you signed up for any kind of IDR plan, you recertify your income for that IDR plan probably based off of your tax return from 2018. Most people had not filed their tax returns for 2019 yet as of mid-March. Most people wait, right? Maybe some people, but most people will have recertified using a 2018 tax return. Now, here we are, kind of starting to close in on the end of 2024, starting in 2025. Do you remember what you made in 2018? I don't remember exactly. I mean, I have to go look it up, right? But it was probably way less than what I earn right now, like most people. especially when you're younger, right? You graduate, your prior year taxable income as a student is zero. Your second year out, your only calendar year income for part of the year because you graduated, right? Middle of the year. Your first full year income out is only the first time you have a full calendar year of income. So that's like 3 years afterwards, and then your payment resets. So it's like only your third year in IDR do you actually see a payment that's reflecting your current income, right? And if you did a tax filing extension, you might be able to delay that until year 4 for that payment to reflect your actual full income. And so since most people that take out student loans, large amounts, are disproportionately people that took them out recently, even though there are a huge long tail of people that took them out a long time ago, numbers wise, most of these folks in student loan world that have decent sized balances are people that graduated in the last 10 years, just because the price is soaring for school and a lot more people borrowing in the direct loan program, etc. Right? So you've got all these people that have come out, and I cannot tell you how many times I have seen NSLDS files that say something like pay as you earn payment, $150 a month, IBR, $300 a month, save $250 a month, right? I see that all the time, and not just for resident physicians or people that were residents back during the pause when the pandemic started. I see it for people that graduated recently from their school because of that whole you earning not a lot of money the first couple of years out, right? I see this for a lot of times just people that had recertified their income in between like an unemployment period or something like that. So it's really common for people to have really low payments. In fact, on the SAVE plan, something like out of the 8 million people that were on it, like 4 million had a $0 a month payment. A lot of those are actually like higher income people, I think, because of just the weird dynamics of how they haven't asked for income since tax year 2018. And a lot of people under the new SAVE plan rules, made not a lot of money relative to, the 225% of the poverty line that you can deduct before having to pay 10% on SAVE. So let's say you've got this $150 a month payment that has existed for a long period of time, and it started up again, but you've had this payment going on for over a year since the student loan pause ended, right? So the danger here is that this end of the IDR recertification delaying, which probably will end for people in 2025, I think, just because the election will be over at that point. And, if you do have any kind of horse trading that needs to occur, which you will, for things like the tax bomb being tax-free, and the estate tax limits getting cut in half in 2026 with the expiring Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, there's going to be a lot of horse trading, right? So I think that, they will probably force a recertification of IDR in 2025, even if, like, Kamala Harris wins and wants to extend it. And so if that occurs, what happens if at the same time courts come down with a hammer on the SAVE plan? So let's think about this. I do think it's more likely than not that the courts will come down not with just a hammer, but with a sledgehammer on the SAVE plan. I think that they think this is a extreme misuse of presidential power. I'm talking about the conservative 8th Circuit and the conservative Supreme Court as to what I think that they will do, right? I think that that's what they are going to think. And if they think that, the question is do they think that about the SAVE plan narrowly, or do they think that about any plan created by the same law that created the SAVE plan? Which, if they think that broader point, which right now the appeals court is thinking more along those lines, it seems, that could imperil the pay plan and the repay plan, which were both created from the ICR statute. It doesn't touch the IBR plan because that's a separate statute, and that defines IBR very specifically. So what is a worst case scenario? I just wanted to throw some examples out so you could hear it. Let's say you've got a physician. She was a resident, before the pandemic. She's got her $150 a month payment that she's had going for PSLF. And, let's say that she finished training in 2022, became an attending, has got, 4 more years of PSLF to go. Well, she's in the SAVE plan forbearance right now, maybe, and let me say she's paying, nothing, but it's not counting for PSLF. And so let's say that they rule that the SAVE plan and all of the plans under the ICR statute are not legal. If that were to happen, then you would have a payment that would absolutely soar. So let's say she's making $300,000 a year. So let's just say that she was on like pay/save or something like that with $150 a month payment that she was going to get to keep until 2025. Well, if she's on the SAVE plan forbearance, she's like frozen until they freaking unfreeze the system, right? But But let's say she's frozen, she can't make these payments. Well, in 2025, let's say they ask for income recertification, and let's say the only option is income-based repayment, which is the only plan guaranteed in statute. If that's the only option, then if she makes $300,000 income, if she borrowed for her first loan for, say, let's say she borrowed her first loan for undergrad in 2012 as a freshman, when she was a freshman in college, right? And then she went to med school in 2016 and then graduated in 2020 and became a resident, and then immediately pandemic happened and such. So if that occurred, right, then her IBR payment would be $3,468 a month, not total, like a month. And so think about what that means, right? You built up savings, you come out, maybe you buy a new car, maybe you buy a house with a fairly modest down payment with high interest rates. I was looking at this like really overpriced spec home in my neighborhood the other day, and it was like, it's $2 million. It's out of the market forever, right? And I was just kind of floored looking at the monthly payment, like with high interest rates that are out right now. Like the monthly payment was like, I think it was like $12,000 or something like that, or $13,000 all in with like property tax. And I was just thinking, oh my gosh, man, oh my gosh. Like I got very lucky buying a house in that like pandemic low interest rate world. Kind of interestingly enough, I wish I had bought a nicer, bigger house because of just how much work the house needed. And it was actually a bad financial decision not to spend more money on a house, but that's a different podcast. But my payment was only like $3,000 something a month. And this is actually like really common for people that bought during the pandemic. I see a ton of like $2,000 to $4,000 a month housing payments. And you can always tell who bought a house after the low interest rate period during the pandemic, because the payments are always like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. And that's just for like an, decent $800K to, low one-ish million house in a, nice city, big city kind of area. So it's just like kind of crazy, right? Like, so let's say you went out and you bought a house with higher interest rate, hoping that you could refinance it at some point. And let's say you've got some savings that you built up, but like not a ton of savings because you've got a couple of young kids, right? Or you're starting a family or something, and you've got a lot of daycare bills to watch your payment go from $150 a month to $3,500 a month. That's going to shock people. That's going to be a gut punch. And that's going to be just something that a lot of people, frankly, are just like not paying attention to, right? It's kind of like nobody pays attention to their taxes if you're a freelancer until you don't withhold enough, and then you didn't realize that you are subject to income tax and 15% self-employment tax, and you don't withhold the adequate amount, and then suddenly you get this surprise bill for like 40% of your earnings because you have to pay 15% self-employment, 24% federal, 5% state, and you're just like, what? I have to pay almost half of what I made to different governmental groups? Like, oh my gosh, like I've already spent some of this money. So that's why I thought I would do this podcast, because I really think a lot of folks are completely unprepared for this. And I think like everybody agrees like student loan costs are too high, and student loan, education shouldn't cost what it does. Like everybody kind of agrees on that, and people don't agree on the other stuff, right? But I think that like the problem is, I think, a lot of the view is like, well, if you just like make people not default, then there's no problem, right? And the reality is like a lot more complex than bumper stickers, right? Like, if you default, I mean, yes, that's very bad, right? But if you have such low payments, right, that no one really feels the cost of education, then you have to regulate the amount borrowed, or you have to do something to make sure that only the folks who need it the most are getting those high loan amounts. Otherwise, what we see has happened, right, is just all the schools have jacked their prices up. A lot of, schools have aggressively opened new programs to take advantage of the government loan program. And, that crowds out investment in other things like pre-K, like childcare, like healthcare, like Social Security, like shoring up that happens, right? So that's just a big mess that, people above my pay grade are going to have to think about and fix at some point. But I just wanted to point this out that like the longer the IDR recertification delay continues, the better it is for borrowers. But at the same time, for a certain subset of borrowers who are not prepared, the bigger the damage is going to be, because people are not going to be prepared for it. If they have all the more generous plans pulled back, where it's just IBR, people might not be able to afford those payments. And I hope that you're not in that group. I hope you will be able to afford the payment. So we've got a lot of resources for you on the Student Loan Planner website that you can use to try to be prepared just in case. You can go to studentloanplanner.com, and the calculator is part of our menu. You can see this on mobile, and you can see it on the desktop version. There's a huge drop down in the calculator subsection, and you'll be able to select like the IDR payment calculator, and you can compare what your payment would be under all the different repayment plans in case save is overturned. And then you can compare, like, putting in your most recent taxable incomes from, say, 2025, what the cost would be for married, or 2023, you can put your taxable incomes in to see what those payments would look like if you file separate versus jointly as well, right? So that would be my first recommendation, is get prepared for this IDR recertification time bomb. Build money and room and space into your budget to be able to cover this higher payment just in case. Be aware if you're eligible for new IBR or old IBR, because that's the only plan that's guaranteed in the statute. And then, if you need us at some point, you can reach out. If you have a voicemail you want to leave or question you want to leave for the pod, studentloanplanner.com/voicemail. And if you need a consult with us, studentloanplanner.com/book. I really appreciate you guys. Remember that we're doing Friday episodes now, so it's going to be every Tuesday and Friday. We're going to be coming out with new shows. The Tuesday episode is going to be about student loan specific stuff, and the Friday show is going to be specifically on how student loan borrowers can grow wealth fast and reach financial independence faster. So our view is that there was really no podcast out there dedicated to student loan borrowers specifically for helping you grow wealth quickly. And it's going to take into account things like keeping your AGI low, success stories of people that have taken huge risks in life and that have paid off, learning lessons from people in our community as well as our own team that have learned different things in finances, going down the journey of life, right? So we want to talk about retirement stuff, but we also want to talk about real stuff, like what happens when you spend way too money on a home renovation? What happened? How do you hire good professionals, for anything, right? How do you make sure you're on track for retirement? What kind of options are available to you if you want to play hardball in negotiating your salary? What about sabbaticals? What about business ownership? What about different kinds of entrepreneurship? What about taking steps back out of the workforce temporarily to, focus on other areas of your life that you want to enrich? What about, going back to school? What about early retirement? What about, a lavish, ultra, spendy retirement? I mean, we're going to try to cover all this stuff, and we're real interested to hear too what you think that we should cover on the podcast. You could also reach out to help@studentloanplanner.com to share your ideas for this Friday shows. But I hope you'll really enjoy it. I hope it'll break up the commute if you have one. And if you want to share anything at all, email us, leave a voicemail. And if you need us for anything, of course, you can always book a consult with our team. But thank you so much for listening to the Student Loan Planner podcast, and I hope you have a good rest of your week.